Okay, I'm back. I'm live. Hopefully, we can hear this time. I'm gonna turn the volume up all the way. Pete, Ronci, are we hearing anything now? Can you say it? Can you hear me? Did we fix it? I fixed it. I I fixed the technical problem. Holy fucking shit. Okay. All right. I'm going to take a deep breath cuz that was nerve-wracking for me cuz it's not bad enough already that this is my first show live with people seeing me. So I actually had to take a shower and change out of my muumuu. Anyways, you're watching Overcoming Amber. This is my show. I will upload a video maybe later today, maybe not later today. I don't know. We'll see how I feel. Explaining why I chose that name for the show. But today, we're going to talk about boundaries. So, for the third time, boundaries. Boundaries are imaginary lines that separate one person from another. Now, it's kind of an abstract concept, right? Because you can't fucking see them, they're not tangible. Think about it in terms of football and basketball. They have out of bounds, right? You got to stay in these boundaries to play the game, right? You got to stay in these boundaries to stay in my life or to stay employed or to be able to drive a car. There's boundaries everywhere. Just don't really think about it until you think about it. So, the way I do my shows is I do a bunch of research and I write down a bunch of shit because I'm horrible at remembering it all in the moment. Again, a boundary is a line that marks the limits of an area. It's a dividing line. So it separates physical space, feelings, needs, and responsibilities from you and another person. It tells other people how they can treat you, what's acceptable and what isn't. It protects a person, their personal and mental space, and it's kind of like a fence between you and your neighbor. It's like, this is my side, this is your side, we don't cross. It's a line. I guess these are all examples of boundaries. It involves the physical and emotional limits of appropriate behavior between people. It's what's okay and what's not okay. It focuses on what you can control. So you can't control if your neighbor keeps crossing the fence, right? Unless you want to stand out there 24 hours a day and physically stop them, possibly get arrested for assault. People will cross boundaries. We'll get to that later, like what you should do when people cross your boundaries. Boundaries should be communicated extremely clearly. The more clear you are, the better. Because if you're not clear, there's a certain type of people or persons that like to cross boundaries and push boundaries. And if you're not clear, they're going to play stupid. They're going to cross your boundary intentionally. And then they're going to be like, oh, I didn't know. No, you knew. You're just playing with me. Don't play with me. Boundaries also need to remain consistent. If you are not consistent with your boundaries, people are not going to take you seriously. They're going to walk all over you. They're going to keep pushing it and keep pushing it, and they're going to wear you down. So you need to remain consistent with your boundaries. Boundaries do have consequences for those who violate them, and those consequences should be discussed beforehand. Because if you just all of a sudden throw a consequence in there, think about a kid. You're not allowed to leave this house without my permission, right? And then they leave the house without your permission, and you take away all of their electronics for 2 weeks, and then they freak out, and they make you the bad guy. But if you tell a child, "Hey, if you leave the house without my permission, this is what's gonna happen. You're gonna lose all your electronics for 2 weeks." They then know. They know what the consequence is of crossing that boundary, and hopefully, it'll deter them from doing it. It invites the right people into your life when you have boundaries because, like I said, if you don't have boundaries, you're gonna get people that push your boundaries, and there is a whole mess of feelings that come up when your boundaries are crossed. I think we've all had that happen to us before, people who take advantage of us or people who know that we don't like certain things and they keep doing it. It also instructs people how to treat you. If you have no boundaries, you'll get treated a certain way. And if at work, somebody else has boundaries and they're very firm and clear in their boundaries, they'll get treated a different way than you. It's kind of your own fault at that point. Sorry, not sorry. Boundaries are accepting responsibility for yourself and your environment. You are in control of how you think, feel, and act, not anyone else. You cannot control how other people think, feel, or act. All you can control is how you respond to it and what you tolerate being in your life. Boundaries and self esteem are deeply intertwined. That is another show that I'm going to do on self esteem because, a lot of people in my life and a lot of people that are my clients have self esteem issues. And I can feel their energy and I can feel them. And I'm like, where did this happen? When did you lose self esteem or not establish self esteem for yourself? Because you're a good person. Why do you think so shitty of yourself? And then if you don't have self esteem, you don't feel you deserve the right to set boundaries. You know, if someone yells at you, that can be a boundary. But if you don't have self esteem, you might feel like you deserve to get yelled at, or you don't have the right to ask other people to treat you kindly. Whole side tangent. I'm still very dysregulated. You didn't hear the first time. This is the third video I've made. We actually have sound. The first time I started talking about how I was very irritated by some people, a person in my house today, and was a little bit dysregulated. And then this is my first show on camera where people can see me, and I'm sitting here watching myself, so that's super fun and intimidating. So, if I fumble a little, please excuse me. I do that a lot. I'm human. I'm a real person just like everyone else. I'm just putting myself out there on camera, on YouTube. I just got a hello. Hi, Otivia. Hi, Diane. All right. So, we've already kind of went over what boundaries are and how they can help you. You also need to revisit and review your boundaries often because as different people come in and out of your life, as you change a job, as you grow as a person, your boundaries will change. What is acceptable yesterday might not be acceptable today because you heard something, one phrase last night that changed your view of things. It is perfectly okay. You should change your boundaries often. You should always be aware of them and aware of other people. And having other people around you points out what some of your boundaries should be. Because if they do something and it makes you feel uncomfortable, upset, angry, guilty, there's an opportunity for a boundary. You could be guilty of something. You could have done something shitty and you deserve to feel guilty, but they could be crossing a line and making you feel guilty about something that is not in your area of responsibility at all. It might be an issue they have. Healthy boundaries are clearly communicated, and the consequences of violating those boundaries should be understood by everyone involved and pre discussed. So, the first time a boundary comes up and you want to, be like, hey, I don't appreciate it when you do this. I won't accept that anymore. And if it happens again, then this is what will happen. And like I said, very clearly, very clear, everyone should understand because if it's unclear, it's gonna get pushed, it's gonna get fucked with, because that's how some people are. Um, again, having no boundaries in your life will attract the wrong kind of people. If you have boundaries in your life, it will push those people away. People who like to take advantage and be in control, narcissists especially, I have, like, a whole 27 episodes on narcissism because, I live with a narcissistic sociopath, and that's where thank you, Pete, because that's where I got a lot of my knowledge of boundaries. It took me we're now at, like, the 18-year mark of him and I living together, and he has taught me a lot about boundaries, and my boundaries are pretty clear. I know how to set them. I know how to be like, "Yeah, no, no." Like, even when people try and dance their way around, try and be sneaky about crossing my boundaries, I'm like, hang on. No, no, no. I won't deal with that." So, here's some signs that you have boundary issues. I'm just gonna read these off, so I'm not even gonna be looking at you. Sorry. If you feel exhausted a lot, saying yes when you want to say no, being a chronic yes person. You know who you are. Complaining about being wronged. You let that happen. I understand that there's a learning curve with boundaries. And, if you feel wronged, it's okay to be upset about it the first time. After that, that's your own fault. Shut the fuck up. Don't complain about it. Set boundaries, and then it won't happen. And if boundaries push these people out of your life, oh well. Don't cling on to someone because you feel any sort of an obligation to them. The only person you have an obligation to is yourself. And I'm including children in this too, because if you are not a strong person and you are not able to set boundaries, you're not doing your kid any good services. Okay, next. Apologizing excessively, even if things aren't your fault. Fearing letting others down more than fearing letting yourself down. Always going with the flow in your friend group. Being described as too nice. When you feel disrespected, you might feel irritated quite often. When you stoop to other people's levels. Passive aggressiveness. That's a sign that you don't have boundaries. When you lose your temper, when you feel resentful, when you blame others. Hi, Dawn. When you overshare. Oversharing, I'm trying to think how to word this, sorry. When you overshare, you are kind of not having your own boundaries of your own stories and personal shit. And you are giving people the chance to hurt you or to take advantage of you. I do it all the time. I'm so fucking guilty. I overshare all the time. but I'm willing to take the consequences that come along with that. If I overshare and someone uses that information to hurt me, they don't hurt me because I accept myself as I am. I accept all the past shit that I did. I accept all the wrongs that I've done and the shitty person that I was. I own that. You can't hurt me with my past because I don't live there anymore. However, if you're an oversharer and you still do some of those things, that's not setting up boundaries for yourself. We'll get into that later. Another sign that you have boundary issues is you feel powerless. You have a lost sense of self. You spend the time sorry, wrong one. You spend the time dreading an event or a person that you are going to see. So if you know Thanksgiving is going to come up and you're like, fuck, I got to go deal with my family. I don't want to. There's probably some boundary issues there because why wouldn't we want to go see your family? Oh, because they cross the lines that you don't like? There you go. Boundaries are hard, but they are extremely, extremely important and necessary for your mental health and well being. Boundaries are not about other people, they're about yourself. They're about loving yourself. And as I said before, boundaries and self esteem are deeply intertwined. I'm going to keep repeating that because it needs to be said. Boundary issues. You resort to unhealthy coping skills or coping mechanisms. You might have trouble making decisions. Why? Because you don't want to upset anybody, right? I don't give a fuck who I upset. If I want to do something for myself or my mental health or because I need to and it upsets other people, I'm sorry. That's your problem. And I know that sounds kind of fucked up, but again, I'm going to make a video that kind of explains why I made this show. And then I'm going to make some more videos that are like the story of my life. And once you hear that, you'll understand why I'm so like, fuck everybody. I spent 10 years alone with no friends. And I know my friends get sick of hearing this. I don't care. Other people need to hear it. I spent 10 years alone with no friends, no dating. I threw myself into self-help and psychology, and I loved it. It was super hard, but I loved it. And that 10 years taught me I don't need anyone. I can get through things on my own. I went back and I started to heal. I didn't want to use the wrong term there. I started to heal my past, and it was so painful. And only I was able to do that and get through that, right? So if I'm constantly leaning on a friend, what if that friend disappears? What if they don't want to listen anymore? So when I say I don't give a shit who my boundaries upset, I mean it. And like I said, that might sound harsh, but if you listen to future episodes, you'll get it. Upsetting people is very it can be a trigger. It can feel bad, but it only feels bad because it's what you were conditioned to do. I guarantee that when you were growing up, you were put in a position and it might not have been said directly to you, stop upsetting people by expressing yourself or letting people down. That's not okay. But you might have learned it through the actions and reactions in your surrounding. So you grew up and learned to not upset people. That is your comfort zone. That is where you feel safe. Speaking up for yourself and upsetting people feels wrong. It's not. It's not wrong at all. What is more important? You feeling okay about yourself and your life and the decisions that you're making and your own mental health and well-being, or making sure fucking your coworker's not angry at you? What the fuck does that matter? Like, why would you lose sleep over that? Who cares if your coworker's upset? They have their own life and their own shit going on. And if they get upset because they crossed your boundary, they probably have some fucked up shit going on that is their responsibility, not yours, not your responsibility, but they make you feel like it's your responsibility because it makes their life easier. Why do you care if their life is easier? You should care about your own life. You should be making yourself happy. You should get in the habit of saying no. Okay, next comment. Yes, it is literally it stems from childhood because in the house, and like I said, you might not have been you nobody probably told you, "Don't speak up for yourself." But the environment and the reactions and the silent cues that you got were that you shouldn't speak up for yourself, right? You're not a child anymore. You are no longer living at home. You don't have to follow those rules. This is why I said boundaries need to be re-examined and constantly because your environment is constantly changing. You should have different boundaries. You should have different boundaries in the bathroom than you do in the kitchen, than you do in your home, than you do outside of your home, than you do when you're driving, than you do when you're at work. Do you get my point? Boundaries are different all across the board. And if you were brought up to put others' needs before your needs, so was I. And I have to tell you, there was a time where I set some consequences on Pete and I made him walk everywhere or take a bus. And if he missed the bus, he had to walk. And this is when he worked 7 or 8 miles away from our house. And there was one night when it was pouring rain. And I talked to my daughter and I said, "You know what? I feel really bad. I'm thinking about going and picking him up." And she went off on me. She's like, "No, he deserves that. That's how he's going to learn his lesson." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Boundaries are a very, very, very hard and uncomfortable thing to do at first when you're taught that they're not okay. If you had a friend tell you whatever story that you're imagining, whatever scenario that you're imagining, if you had a friend tell you that and they were in that situation, what would you tell them? Would you tell them the same thing that you tell yourself? No, you wouldn't, because you care about your friends or everybody else, strangers. You literally care about strangers more than you care about yourself. What? I love you guys. I say these things because I want to see you have happier lives. I don't want you to feel obligated to do anything for anybody but yourself. I know how much it's changed my life, and it was hard. It was super hard, but I'm much happier now. I'm much more firm in my beliefs and who I am, and I have self-esteem now. And if I have someone in my life who constantly crosses my boundaries, guess what? They're going to be out of my life. I don't care what goes along with them, what they take with them, what opportunities might be taken away from me because of it. Go fuck yourself. I'll find my own way. I'm going to do what I want to do no matter what. And whatever's really meant to me will come to me, whether it's through you or someone else. Okay. Yes, I'm smoking because I don't have my fucking music and promo breaks like I used to. Okay. I think I left off with you have trouble making decisions. Now, you have trouble making decisions because you're worried about what other people are going to think or feel. Well, I want to do this, and I know in my mind that I want to do this, but so and so will do this, or so and so will say that. Let them. When you have issues with boundaries, you get burnout because it's exhausting. It's exhausting when people constantly push your boundaries. I went through that this morning, right before my first live show. The narcissist in my life had to create chaos and stress me out. And you know what my boundary was? If you stress me out one more time today, I'm going to make you leave the house until it's time for bedtime because I'm not the one doing anything wrong. You can remove yourself from the situation because I used to go and hide in my room and feel bad about myself and believe whatever this gaslighting narcissist would tell me. And I'd sit there and beat myself up. And then through that 10 years of therapy, I learned to have self-esteem. And then even after that, because it's only been 2 or 3 years that I've had the concept in my head that he's a narcissistic sociopath, through that, I've learned to call it out in the moment with no emotion. I mean, I was emotional inside, but I lowered my voice and I took a breath and I said, "This is the way you're crossing my boundary and I don't appreciate it. And this is what's going to happen if you do it again. Or we've already had this talk. So said consequence is going to be implemented." I still get exhausted and tired. The littlest things too, because it's happened so many times in the past. And this isn't just for me, this is for everyone. Your boundaries have been crossed so many times in the past that when it happens, you get what's called an emotional flashback. Now, flashbacks, when we think of the word flashback, we think of, oh, we see it in our mind's eye. We can revisualize. An emotional flashback is you feel all the same feelings from when those boundaries were crossed before. So you might be in from an outsider's point of view overreacting or acting out of proportion for whatever thing goes on to set you to, like, cross your boundary, but, like, when you really think about it, all the other times before that this has happened, of course you're acting that way because this is a constant thing. And if you constantly punch somebody in the face, it sucks. They're going to be scared all the time. It's expected. So, this is why setting up boundaries is extremely important because who wants to feel that way? Who wants to feel burnout and fatigued and upset? And it's like the one littlest thing happens and you're shut down. You're shut down for the rest of the day. All you can do is distract yourself and dissociate. That's no way to live life. It sucks. I've been there. I'm still there sometimes. I still struggle with it and it's hard. Another sign you have boundary issues is people pleasing. Yep. I think we all people please to an extent. I know that one of the biggest places I people please is at work. But that's just because, like, I don't want to get fired or yelled at. And I work with customers, like I'm in customer service. So I kinda have to, but I'm aware of it. I'm aware that I'm doing it. It's not something in my subconscious that's just happening. It's not an autopilot thing. It is me making a conscious decision. Okay, I can yell at this customer because 'cause they're being rude, or I can smile and try and help them because I don't wanna get fired. I know I'm doing it. It's still fucking exhausting, though. Okay, overly focusing on others to the point of exhaustion. Kinda goes along with people pleasing, but if you have some very needy friends, oh, you know what? I am not sorry that you feel attacked because this is all shit you need to hear. You feel attacked because you identify with it. I'm not attacking you. I'm just doing my radio show. Oh, I can't even call it my radio show anymore. I'm doing my what am I doing? My YouTube show? My social media show? My video? I'm doing my video. Sorry you feel attacked, Dawn. I love you. I'll help you with it. Okay. And Amber, you're lucky you're late because I had technical problems and I had to figure out the sound on my radio luckily on the YouTube. luckily, I had some people watching that were all like, "Hey, can't hear you." And then I'm proud of myself because I figured it out. Now I have sound. Yay. Okay. Um, right now I'm going over signs that you have boundary issues. Behaving strictly in the service of others. You don't do anything you want for yourself, or if you do, it's at these obscure times where other people aren't coming at you and asking you for things. Um, a huge reason that people have boundary issues is because they're afraid of rejection and or abandonment. YouTube video series. There we go. Like I said, I went 10 years without any friends. I'm not afraid of rejection. I'm not afraid of abandonment. You can't take anything away from me. If you do, oh well. It wasn't meant to be in my life and I'll get over it. It sucks. It hurts, but I am more important, and my mental health and me feeling happy about things and secure in my relationships is more important than letting people push me around. So the rejection and abandonment issues are fucking huge with boundaries. Those are also tied in, very intertwined with setting healthy boundaries. Of course they are. Overcommitting to things in your life that you don't have time or desire for. Taking care of others to your own detriment. Now, there are some fucking exceptions. If a loved one is dying and you are taking care of them, that does not reflect boundary issues. If you have a mother with dementia that moves in with you, that does not reflect boundary issues. So there are some certain exceptions to each one of these things that I'm saying. Don't trick yourself into anything, but know that there are exceptions. You feel you can't say what you need to or you want to. I constantly say things that I shouldn't because it's how I feel. You feel like a burden. Stop feeling like a burden. I let people internalize that and then I yelled at them for it. What's love, Don? Oh, taking care of others like that are terminal or whatever. Yes, that is love. That is not boundary issues. When you are a pushover, that is a sign of boundary issues. People walk all over you and you blatantly tolerate you tolerate blatantly, third time's a charm. You tolerate blatantly disrespectful behavior. You struggle to have your own opinions or your own identity, and you are used to compromising your core values and your beliefs, and you follow others as to develop yourself. So you're kind of just doing what others are doing around you instead of what you want to do or figuring out who you are. You give away time and valuable skills for free. I give away valuable skills for free because I have friends in my life that I want to see do better, and those are people that are willing to help themselves. I love people that are willing to help themselves. I will do anything for them because I know how hard that is, and the universe likes to send you messages and ideas and concepts and insights that you might not find on your own, or you might not get them for years if someone else doesn't say them. I love helping the people in my life because it was hard for me. And if I have any sort of advice or insight on the situation that they're telling me they're going through, I don't give a shit if they want it or not. I'm going to tell them because I love my people. Another sign you have boundary issues. You have draining relationships and people that dump their problems on you, leading to an uneven give and take relationship. You are highly sensitive to the opinions of others, especially criticism. It's okay because as I read that, I thought, I feel some sort of way when other people criticize me, right? I feel hurt. I feel hurt. And then after that hurt goes away, I'm able to examine it and be like, is this true? Yes, it is. I need to apologize and I need to correct my behavior going forward. Or no, they're totally twisting that. That is not my responsibility. Go fuck yourself. Um, oh, that wasn't it. Highly sensitive to the opinions of others, criticism or disapproval. Your worth does not equal the opinion of others. You should not constantly be seeking approval to reinforce your worth. Your worth comes from within. Um, I'm always brought back to a $100 bill. We have a fresh, crispy $100 bill, fresh off the press, right? If I crumple it up and I throw it on the ground, does it change the value of that $100 bill? Is it worth less than $100? What if I run it through the washing machine and the dryer? Is it still worth $100? What if it sits out in the sun all day and gets faded? What if I lose it under the car seat of my car for 4 years and then find it one day? It is still worth $100. So just because you have been through shit does not lessen your value or your worth. Like, hi, Mike. Hi, Mike. Okay. Oh, I have just a couple more, just a couple, one or two. You might have boundary issues. I'm just going to go through these quick because I'm almost like an hour in already, and this is going to be a 4-hour long show if I don't. If you res- if you feel responsible for other people's feelings and will blame yourself even if it makes no sense. You resent when people ask things of you and those who have no boundaries to say no. Even when you agree to do these things, you're resentful about it. This may materialize as a general irritability or emotional outbursts over small, completely unrelated things. Because again, everything stays in your subconscious. You might not remember the neighbor 12 years ago that used to borrow your hair dryer every day, and then you would have to go down and ask for it back before you took a shower. That wasn't a random example, that actually happened. Um, your subconscious remembers it, and it's going to come out in a situation towards someone who probably doesn't deserve it. You might have a hard time telling others how you feel. You tend to stay stuck in negative relationships. You feel trapped, stuck, overwhelmed, or manipulated in relationships. You feel you've lost your voice or no one listens to you. You might suffer from depressive moods or anxiety. You might just feel awful in general. I wonder why. Because you're not taking care of yourself. Boundaries do take care of your mental health because you don't get all these feelings of resentment and anger and irritability from people crossing your boundaries. You wonder why you fucking feel like shit all the time and you're tired? Because you don't stand up for yourself. You might not know who you really are. You don't feel solid, secure, or know who you are. You might have just, gone through childhood and did what your parents told you, did what you needed to survive, and then just kept living that way. You never really took the time to figure out who you are. Like when someone asked me who I am before, I used to be like, I'm a mom. I work at a grocery store. I don't know. That's a huge question. What do you mean? Now I have a lot of things. I know who I am now. Still learning. People might use you or you might feel used, and you might be fusing your identity with the identity of another person around you. Codependency if you don't have solid boundaries. The capacity to be aware of, in control of, and express one's emotions, and the ability to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathetically is the definition of emotional intelligence. You don't necessarily have to have an extremely highly developed emotional intelligence to set boundaries, but it does help. Because if you are emotionally intelligent, which means you understand your emotions and sometimes the emotions of people around you, if you're close enough to them, you're more able to control your moods, express your feelings, and set boundaries. So, emotional intelligence is basically the ability to manage your emotions, to identify them, to figure out what you need to do, the ability to perceive, understand, and manage one's own emotions and relationships. It involves being aware of emotions in oneself and others and using this to guide thinking and behavior. Emotionally intelligent individuals can motivate themselves, read social cues, and build strong relationships. So, if you're not aware of your own emotions, how are you supposed to know when your boundaries are being crossed? You know what I mean? If you are numb and you are dissociated and you don't realize when, like, when something little happens, you shut down, right? This is how I used to be. I'm taking this example from my own life. When something little would happen, I would just shut down. I would distract myself with TV or sleep or eating or other habits. I used to do a lot of drugs and alcohol, and I wouldn't focus on the feelings. So these situations kept repeating themselves until I finally was like, I told you a secret about myself and you told everyone or you used it against me. That hurt me. That made me angry. That made me feel unsafe. Therefore, I'm not going to tell you any more secrets. I'm going to get you out of my life. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're able to identify the emotions that you felt, then you can figure out the problem solving aspect of it and the boundary setting. Um, there is a difference of opinion. I did some research on this. There is a difference of opinion whether people are born with emotional intelligence or whether they learn it. I know I learned it. I don't know if I was born with it. Um, it involves the ability to express and manage emotions. That's essential. But so is the ability to understand, diagnose, and react to the emotions of others. So it's not just emotional intelligence about yourself and what you're feeling. It's also about being receptive to your partner, your friends, even the people you work with. Like, there's emotions sometimes involved in coworker relationships. If you are not emotionally intelligent, chances are there's always going to be this rockiness, this unstableness. That's a good word, unstable. The ability to monitor one's own emotions and other people's, to discriminate between different emotions, label them appropriately, and use emotional information to guide thinking and behavior. So, if you're in a good mood and you go into work and you're all happy and cheerful and your coworker seems down and you're like, "Hey, you're not yourself today. What's going on?" And they're like, "Oh, my cat died." That's gonna be your emotional cue because if you're emotionally intelligent, even the littlest bit, you're gonna be like, "Oh, I'm gonna tone down my happy, cheerful self because they're very sad. They're very upset. I think it's kinda rude to be happy when someone's going through something hard." Does that make sense? Yeah, that makes sense. I don't need to ask. Where am I? Being emotionally intelligent is key to how one reacts to what life throws at them. It is furthermore a fundamental element of compassion and comprehending the deeper reasons behind other people's actions. So, because I have practiced so much and worked so hard to be emotionally intelligent, I know how to react to others. I can read people when they walk up to me. Is it okay to joke around with this person that comes up to the customer service desk? Do I need to be completely professional? Can I say the word fuck and not get in trouble? You need to know how to read people in your life. Emotional intelligence is vital when dealing with stressful situations like confrontation, change, and any obstacles that you come across, whether they're at home, at work, or at the bar. I touched on this earlier. Learned boundaries. They're developed over time because of someone else around you that you have observed. You never learned how to understand, create, set up, or keep your own clear, healthy boundaries. So, this is why you are having all of these. I don't even know the words. This is why all this bullshit's going on in your life because you never learned how to manage any of this because it wasn't the environment that you grew up in. And no one walks up to you when you graduate high school and is like, "Hey, let me teach you how to be a healthy person." It usually happens when you seek out therapy on your own or realize that you're not happy about certain patterns that you or other people in your life do. Like, you just continue living the way you grew up because no one points it out to you or you don't notice it. And sometimes people just live that way their whole life. That sucks. Okay. No one gets to tell you what your boundaries should be or not be. There is no right or wrong either. Boundaries are not right or wrong. I mean, there's some like extremely excessive examples that we could pick, but generally on the surface, they just differ from one person to another. What is acceptable to you might not be acceptable to another person. You know what I mean? Some people don't mind peeing in front of their partners. Some people are like, "Hey, go to the other side of the house." Do you know what I mean? It's different for everyone. Healthy boundaries from healthy attachments earlier in life usually correlate. If you did not have healthy attachments when you were growing up, you're going to have shitty boundaries as an adult. Boundaries are not about forcing anyone else to change. They are not about controlling anyone else. It is a request for change, and then a boundary is set for us to take care of ourselves. This says house analogy: your yard, house, dog poop, breaking things. These are the kind of notes that I'm like, oh, I'm just going to paraphrase this, and then I'll remember when I'm on air. Yeah. So I think it was that, you don't have a fence in between your house and your neighbor's house, and the dog constantly comes over that the neighbor owns and shits in your yard. And I have no idea what breaking things means. It's kind of like the time I tried to use that nose spray with the cap on it. Okay. So, you cannot make Okay. You can do whatever you want, but there are rules for my space, and if you don't expect my rules, then you can't be in my space. Your space can be in your own bedroom. You can't come in my bedroom if you put your shoes on my bed. It can be in your house. It can be on your property. It can be in your life, friendships, partners. I had some, this is how I first 10 years ago got all the people out of my life, was like, these people are not doing the reciprocating. They're not reciprocating what I give. They don't give that much back. And that was, like, one of the first things that I started thinking of. And I was like, "Yeah." I didn't even wanna talk to them because I knew them, and I knew they wouldn't respect it, and I knew it was gonna be a waste of time. And then I was like, "You know what? I have the same problem with boyfriends." So I just got everybody out of my life. And it wasn't till I started working about 5 years ago that I was like, "Okay, I really liked my boss, and we got along very well, and she was the first friend that I allowed back into my life." And she crossed some boundaries, but I didn't have the strength to stand up to her, and because I was scared. I was scared. I was like, "I don't wanna tell her X, Y, and Z because I don't wanna lose her as a friend and blah, blah, blah." 5 years later, I'm very firm in what I'll accept. You also need to take into consideration when you first start setting boundaries, you can't just kick people out of your life for one little thing because you decided you wanted to set boundaries. You need to give people a chance to learn your boundaries and to respect them. It is a learning process because these people are not used to you having boundaries, right? Then when you do have boundaries, it's going to shift. You never know how it's going to work out. All you can do is trust that you're taking care of yourself, and that is the most important thing. People don't generally like being told what to do or how to act. You don't like it, right? They don't like it either. So it leads to resistance, annoyance, and rebelling. Think of a teenager. When you had a teenager, or if you can imagine what having a teenager's like, you can tell them, "Hey, this person is bad for you. They're going to be a bad boyfriend. I don't want you to date them." It's going to want to make them do it more. Sometimes setting boundaries as an adult, you run into the same thing. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Boundaries are not ultimatums. It is making a request, hopefully a level of respect and reciprocity in close relationships where requests will be hopefully honored and respected. And these are things, boundaries should definitely be if someone constantly makes you feel guilty, if they make you feel anxious every time you have to go and hang out with them, if anything that you take as disrespect or not an okay way to be treated, and maybe you're not in a place where you can see yourself like that because you don't have respect or self-esteem, then think of your other friend. Would I want my other friend to experience this? Sometimes you kind of have to go outside of yourself at first because you don't have the balls to say I don't deserve that. But if you wouldn't want that happening to your mother, your sister, your best friend, your aunt, why do you let it happen to yourself? All right. Creating boundaries causes a shift or a ripple. You got to break through the things that are holding you back. So, if you know that your fear of upsetting people is holding you back, get over that. Boundaries come if the request is not honored. So, you might say, "Hey, when you're around my 2-year-old, please don't say swear words. I don't like that. I don't allow that in my house." Right? Then, if your friend doesn't respect that, you address it again. "If you continue to swear in front of my 2-year-old, then this is what I will do for myself in this situation." That could be, you're not allowed over to the house. You're not allowed to hang around me when my child is around, right? That's a pretty easy boundary to imagine. There's a lot of disrespect and people in this world that will walk all over your boundaries and push you, and you really have to stand up for yourself, and you should not feel guilty about it. You should not feel bad about it. Why? Other people are entitled to their own opinions and beliefs, but if you reply, "Hey, I'm not interested in talking about whatever, so I will not engage in this conversation. I will not answer questions about it, and I don't wanna talk about it." There's nothing wrong with that. That would be an example that might happen at, like, family gatherings. If you have 2 people that have extremely opposing political views and they don't have the skills to talk about it, to yell at each other, and then go make dinner and have a good night, then you might just wanna say, "Hey, I'm not okay discussing this subject." It's your choice, it's not theirs. It also applies to children if you have them. Um, you need to set boundaries with your kids. Because if you don't, they turn out to be 17-year-old brats who think it's okay to steal from other people and lie and do illegal things. Chloe. Chloe's not awake yet. Pop-up visits. If someone is just text you and they're like, "Hey, I'm at your house." It's okay to be like, "Yeah, I'm not dressed. I don't want company." No. Even things like phone calls. Sometimes that crosses a boundary. Sometimes you don't wanna talk on the phone. Sometimes you want your space, and that's okay. It's okay to not answer it and text and be like, "Hey, I'm busy, I'll call you back later." Or just, "I'll call you back later." You don't owe anyone an explanation for things that you don't wanna do. This has been happening with me lately, and it's nobody watching, so constant phone calls or text messages or Facebook messages, one right after the other, annoying, annoying. People that I'm not even close to, people that have just come across me and they're all like, "Okay, I enjoy the interaction. I understand that you have questions for me that I can answer and I can help you with in your life. However, this is hard-earned knowledge for me. I I gave up a lot to learn these things. This is also my business. I charge people for this. At some point, I have to say, okay, if you would like to know anything more, we're going to need to set up a visit with a predetermined amount that you're going to pay me." Do you know how hard that was for me the very first time I had to put that boundary down? Get over it. You need to. Because if you don't, people will take advantage of you. You will get hurt. And at that point, it is nobody else's fault but your own. You are putting your own self through suffering. Okay. I have the words 3 steps written down. Okay. First, you have to get really clear on your boundaries. You need to be solid and secure, and like your boundaries, you need to have reasons for them. You need to believe that this is the right boundary for you, and you have to stand firm in it. Consistency is key. You have to believe you are worthy of having boundaries, that you are allowed to have space with your own rules, even if other people don't agree with them, like them, or want to follow them. There will be pushback, but you are messing with the system that's been in place for a while. They've been allowed to walk all over you and do whatever they want. Of course, they're not going to be happy about it. You're messing with the system. They're not going to like being held to your rules. There will likely be pushback. They will test boundaries. They will possibly try and push you into shutting you down so they can get what they want. This is what my teenager does. She knows my triggers. She knows the things that really bothers me. And when she really wants something, she'll do it. And then it hurts even more because she fucking knows what she's doing, but she's so selfish. She doesn't care. It's different. She's a teenager. She doesn't understand the depth of pushing me to my shutdown point. I try not to let it bother me, but it is okay for you to say no. Just because I accepted this way of functioning for however long does not mean I have to accept it anymore. I am allowed to say no at any time. I don't see it here, so I'm going to say it now. No is a complete sentence. You do not need to give anybody an explanation. You do not give anybody reasons. You don't have to explain yourself to anyone. You can just say, I don't want to talk on the phone right now. I wasn't able to get to you earlier. Sorry. Like, you don't even have to say sorry. You do not need to explain yourself to anyone. If you choose to, that's okay. Like, if you have a partner or a close friend and you set a boundary in place and then you explain to them why, it might help them understand it and respect it a little bit more. If you have a coworker that's constantly trying to hand you religious pamphlets, you don't owe them an explanation. Do you know what I mean? Different relationships call for different things. No one else's preferences are more important than your own preference of how you spend your time and energy. 2, implement the boundary. So the first one was get really clear on your boundaries. Now we're implementing them. And then the third one is keeping the boundaries with consistency. Overtly say the boundary. Clearly communicate the boundary, verbally and non-verbally. An example of that. Let's say you tell your husband, "Hey, I don't want to have sex tonight." That's pretty clear, right? But then you can't go put on sexy lingerie and walk around the house. You need to keep your verbal and your nonverbals consistent. That was the only one I could think of that was easy and quick, sorry. You can call them out clearly, concisely, and calmly. I am not engaging now, but I will re-engage in the conversation when you can be respectful. If you can't, that's your choice, but I will not participate. I am not willing to talk about fill in the blank, but I am willing to talk about fill in the blank. You can change the subject. Um, you can just simply say, I'm not willing to engage. And I know this seems so shocking for some people because you're not used to doing that. You can't even imagine being like, "Yeah, I don't wanna talk about that." What's the worst that's gonna happen? Stand up for yourself. Okay. Keep your responses short on the surface and don't fall into it. Repeat this approach if reconfronted with the issue. When I say don't fall into it, um, my daughter will have a way of asking me for something, and then if I say no, she'll keep coming at me from different angles, and sometimes she sucks me in, and then I'm like, "Damn it," and I don't realize it until after. Don't fall into it. If that approach fails, if you're trying to work around it and be like, "Yeah, mhm," if that doesn't work, you're gonna have to be more direct, and I know that being direct feels very wrong, but it's only because 'cause you're not used to it. It is not wrong. Wouldn't you prefer clear communication rather than dancing around things? If you are good at it at work and you receive it from people at work, maybe that's where you can start to learn. This is what clear communication looks like. Do your own research too. Get on YouTube, get on Google. There's a ton of shit out, ton of information out of there. The last thing is you got to keep the boundary consistent. You made the boundary, you set the boundary in place, you stood up to it, you got to keep doing it. Because if you mustered up the courage to start the boundary, and then when there's resistance, you crumble, it's not going to stick. It won't work. You have to be stubborn about your boundaries. Don't crumble. Don't give in. Like I said, it might feel weird, uncomfortable, or wrong to set boundaries when you haven't before, but that's because you are in foreign territory. Let's say you grew up in the United States and you spoke English, right? If you go over and you go to Italy, you don't know Italian, it's going to be foreign. It's going to feel weird. It's going to feel wrong. You're going to feel uncomfortable. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be there. That just means you have to get used to it. You have to learn the language. You have to learn the roads and the different ways of transportation to get to the different places. It's just a new skill you have to learn. It is not as intimidating as you're making it out to be. Sorry, I've been looking at one person this whole time. All right. It is a new behavior that you should not feel guilty about. You need to be solid in your boundaries. Believe that you deserve them. You get to write the rules for your life and how you're willing to be, accept being treated. Like I said, just because yesterday you let your boss yell at you, the next day you go into work, he can yell at you and you can be like, I don't want to, I don't feel comfortable continuing this conversation if your voice is raised. Or I don't feel comfortable continuing this conversation unless there is another witness present. Yeah, it's scary. You're not going to die. You're going to get better results once you're on the other side of it. When you set them, when you say no to something, you're going to get pushback. And if you fold, it just communicates that all they have to do is give you the pushback. So if you set a boundary once and then the second time you fold, the third time you try and set that boundary, you're going to have a hell of a time getting it through the other person's head because you weren't consistent. And you're going to give them what they want or do what they want if they push you. Don't set yourself up for that. It's not fun, trust me. Inconsistency communicates that you don't really mean it. Yeah, I need to make these videos shorter. Maybe I'll do a part 1 and a part 2 next time. Yeah, I think I'm gonna do that right now because, there's a lot more. I have different types of boundaries. We have physical, emotional, time. Yes, there are boundaries on your time. You ever had that one friend that you're sitting there talking to and you're being very clear that you need to leave, you're putting your purse on your shoulder and taking a couple steps away and they continue talking and then they follow you and then you take a couple more steps and then they follow. There's boundaries on time. Sexual boundaries, I think we are all aware of that. Intellectual boundaries, material boundaries with your things. You remember the hairdryer example I gave? That's a material boundary. Personal, professional, social, digital, relationship, health and wellness, spiritual, financial, energetic. So I'm going to wrap this up. Do you guys have any questions? I feel like I've been very clear about it. I feel like it is in your hands to decide what your boundaries are, what you're okay with, what you're not okay with. There is nothing wrong with telling someone not to yell at you, not to make comments towards you that are derogatory, not to try and force you or bullying you into doing what they want you to do. I think everybody on here is well aware of a current situation I have going on in my life where I had to put boundaries down. I tried several times, and this person was not respecting me. And I want you to think about all the fucking ripple effects that it caused. How many different people were affected by that? how much I lost because I was like, yeah, I'm not going to tolerate this disrespect. I'm worth it. I deserve more. I don't care what benefits I might be getting out of the friendship. I didn't enter the friendship to get those benefits. They just happened to come along. That was awesome. But you're not going to trap me in any sort of a relationship except my living situation. Don't throw that in my face. You're not going to trap me in any sort of a relationship by holding things over my head. I don't give a fuck. Take them. Bye. Let that be an example. I love you guys, at least the people on here. I might love some of the people that see this later, but thanks for watching. I appreciate the support. Have a good day. Yes.